Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment of our Reviewed and Ranked series. Today, we are taking the next step down the roster and finishing out all characters within the base roster that begin with the letter D. And of course, that brings us to Drax the Destroyer from the Guardians of the Galaxy. And this character is a little bit interesting in some rights, so we will be breaking down his moveset just like we have with all of our previous characters and all the characters that will come after him. So if you want to make sure that you never miss one of these videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and don't forget to leave a like on today's video if you found it helpful and or useful. Now, one of the first things that we do need to talk about when it comes to Drax is the synergies which he has available to him from a team building standpoint. And Drax actually doesn't have a whole lot of available synergies. He only has 4. He has a resilience synergy with the Guardians of the Galaxy, 2 strength synergies, one with heavy hitters and the other with cutting edge. And the final synergy that he has is the Vitality synergy from being a member of the Ultimate Alliance 3 cast. Now, not every character on this roster has that synergy in particular. My guess is it may have been given to him to help pad out this overall synergies that he has available to him. But if you know something that I don't, please feel free to let me know in the comments down below. We can now transition over to talking about the basic moves in Drax's kit before making our way over to his unique ability and synergy attacks. Drax has a very basic 3-hit combo, which involves a couple of pretty basic, straightforward punches. They do have the melee attribute, so there's not a whole lot of range that Drax has at his disposal, but thankfully, anytime you are knocking into some of the smaller grunt characters, which are common throughout the opponents that you will match up against, you will be able to stagger them out and deter them from counterattacking just based off of your overall proximity. Drax's heavy attack involves a lunge forward before plummeting his twin daggers into the ground in the area in front of him. And this does also have an area of knockback. It's a fairly decent spacing tool when it comes to his overall attacks, especially because when you're layering into your opponents with your standard punches, the final hit of that combo will send the characters flying backwards, and his heavy attack does allow you to close the gap and get additional damage in off of that last hit. So it's kind of useful as a combo extender, as well as closing ground onto some of the more tricky enemies, especially if they've rolled back or dashed away. So a certain increased element of versatility when it comes to Drax's heavy attack. For his jump and mobility, Drax does possess a double jump, which is one of the more useful items within the roster, as it allows you some increased aerial mobility for navigating some of the trickier puzzles, especially the laser grids that are common throughout various different types of content, including some of the DLC within Shadow of Doom. So definitely a useful item to have at your disposal. Drax does have a falling aerial attack, which is very lackluster in its animation. It's decent in terms of what it actually accomplishes. Drax will just kind of fall down onto the ground and slam down both feet upon hitting the ground. In addition to not being overall flashy, it also isn't super useful because, as we've discussed with previous characters, Drax doesn't really have a reason to be up in the air. None of his abilities that we'll analyze in just a moment take him up into an airborne state. So anytime you use this falling aerial, it is going to be because you have deliberately jumped to put yourself in a position where this move would be used. But if you do have a chance to use it, it's not the worst falling aerial that exists within the game. And the last standard item before moving over to his abilities is the block and dodge animation. This involves a pretty common 2-arm blocking stance, though this distinction here is he does not cross his arms in front of him. Rather, he just kind of hunkers down much like a boxer would, and then he rolls away from the attacks in the area of directional input. The first ability in Drax's kit is the Dagger Assault. This is an attack that involves rapid slashes out in front of the character with both daggers. It can be prolonged as long as you have energy points, provided that you continue to repeatedly press the attack button. It's unique in the fact that it possesses both the melee and piercing attack types, which does make sense because it is a combination of punches while daggers are within hand. So it would experience the benefit of having both elements of that type of attack. It has the Barrage Synergy trait and is one of Drax's better options in terms of output damage to opponents that are not blocking with that damage classification of A, though it does suffer in the synergy area, only having a D classification to the stagger damage, but remains fairly conservative in its energy point consumption with the classification of C. As this ability is ranked up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, have increased attack damage, deal increased damage to the stagger gauge, and finally have a reduced chance of being interrupted. The second ability which Drax possesses is the Ground Smash, which involves a two-fisted strike into the ground, which does create a circular shockwave from the point of contact. This attack does serve quite well for knocking some characters back from himself, though it does have the unfortunate side effect of Drax entering a taunt animation after the attack has concluded, which means that he doesn't have as many opportunities for a direct follow-up as he otherwise would. This has the melee attack type and the slam synergy trait, and has very consistent numbers across the board with C classifications in the damage, energy point consumption, and stagger categories. As this attack is ranked up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, have increased attack damage and increased damage to the stagger gauge, as well as finally having a reduced chance of the attack being interrupted. The third ability at Drax's disposal is the Twin Slash, which will send him lunging forward with an X-type slash to cut into enemies that are in his path. This will require you to hold down the button to aim it, though if you do detonate it in the synergy type attack, he will immediately lunge forward in the direction that he is facing. It possesses the piercing attack type with the charge synergy trait, is a little bit worse in the overall damage aspect of what Drax is capable of with that C damage classification as well as the C energy point consumption classification, but it is one of the best moves in his kit to use when it comes to cutting down the enemy stagger gauges with a classification of A. As you rank this attack up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, have increased attack damage, increased damage dealt to the stagger gauge, and finally, that reduced chance of being interrupted. And finally, we have the Destroyer's Rage ability, where Drax will lunge forward in a spinning forward slashing motion. This covers about the same amount of ground as the Twin Slash does, though it does have the added benefit of having hitboxes extended to the side instead of just directly in front of the character, and thus it has a higher damage rating with the classification of A, but a lower stagger rating with the classification of D, thus making it akin to the Dagger Assault. It still maintains a consistent energy point consumption with that classification of C, and as you rank this attack up, it will have a reduced energy point cost, increased attack damage, increased damage dealt to the stagger gauge, and finally, that oh so common reduced chance of being interrupted. Now, when it comes to Drax's extreme attack, this attack does start up very quickly and reaches its conclusion in about 4.5 seconds, and involves a flurry of blows out in front of the character, including a decent amount of range on these slashes that go out, making his reach on his extreme attack much further than what it is with any of the moves in his standard kit. Though the downside to this is he does detonate this attack about exactly where he stands. Though, as you'll see, upon the conclusion of this attack being used, he does activate a little taunt animation, but then gains the particle effect of his attack having been boosted, which is evidenced by the red particles which are surrounding his character. That attack boosting item does have a duration of about 15 seconds, and will overall increase the damage that you're able to put out during that time frame with any attacks that you should choose to use. All things considered, it's a decent extreme attack. It just has the unfortunate side effect of detonating right where it stands, so be very conscious about where you initiate this attack, as he will be locked into that animation exactly where he is as soon as he starts it. So now that we have looked at everything Drax has to offer, we now need to answer the question, where does he fit in within the character ranking? And it's not as easy as we might think. Now, he definitely doesn't belong in S or A tier, and he doesn't belong in D or F tier either. But he's not quite, in my opinion, good enough to be placed into the B category ranking. And the main reason is his overall combo is pretty lackluster. But he is definitely a lot better than other characters that we've looked at. So I am going to go ahead and place Drax in C tier, but I'm going to place him in C tier ahead of both Black Widow and Doctor Strange, because he does bring a little bit more to the table. His abilities are a little bit better when compared to the two of them, and he does have that added benefit of being able to amplify his own attacks after using an extreme attack for a short period of time. So right here is where we are going to leave Drax in our overall ranking. But what do you think? Do you agree with my ranking? Do you disagree? Is there anything you feel that I overlooked when it comes to Drax's character? Be sure to let me know in the comments down below. And again, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a video in this series or in any of the other video series that I bring to you on a daily basis. So thanks again for watching, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day.